Today we are joined by Professor Armand D'Angour. Last time we discussed about his book Socrates in Love. Today I have only one question, and that is about music and poetry. So, Professor Armand, thank you for joining us, and I just want to know why Greek music and poetry is important, and what is the major difference that we can find between the Greek and modern music.
Thank you very much for inviting me to talk about this. It's a big question. The ancient Greeks were very keen, were a very keen musical society. What we have that survives from ancient Greece from, say, 750 BC, when Homer was singing the epics, Iliad and Odyssey, all the way through perhaps to the 4th century BC, where you get the tail end of ancient comedy, which had a sung and danced component, as had ancient tragedy of the 5th century, where the choruses were sung and danced. So in the tragedies such as Sophocles' Oedipus, there are these choral episodes which involved music, singing and dancing to the accompaniment of an instrument which was a double pipe, 2 pipes played at the same time with double reeds, called the aulos. So music was there from, as I say, from Homer through several centuries, and it was one of the main ways in which poetry was actually performed and presented. So what we call poetry, certainly in the 6th century BC, the so-called lyric poetry, was sung music. And what we call the lyrics of that poetry were the words to which music was set, and the music is lost. But what we mean by music is not just melody. So what is lost from the lyric poetry are the melodies, but we do have the rhythms, because the Greek language was naturally rhythmical. It had long and short syllables, and you can put them into various configurations to create different rhythms. So we do have some music, the rhythmical side of things. We also happen to have notated melodies, but they don't go back to the 6th century BC. They go back to the late 5th century BC. So the earliest notated document of any size is a record of a passage of choral music from a play by Euripides, which we know was performed and produced in 408 BC. And we have a few bars, I mean, it's not done in bars, but we can call it that, of music, which can be reconstructed and heard and played. And it's fascinating because it shows that there was a tonal system, or certainly I've reconstructed it, and I think that it shows that, a tonal system, i.e. a reversion to a bass note of some kind, that is not hugely different from the tonality that Western music, at any rate, exhibits. So what is the main difference? Well, one of the things that fragment also shows us, and we have notation, we have all the evidence we need to decipher that notation. One of the things it shows is that the Greeks use not just tones and semitones, which of course are the main building blocks of Western music today. They had microtonal intervals, so they had 1/3 tone intervals. And, you know, of course, there are other traditions around the world, and I think certainly in Indian tradition, where you don't just deal with tones and semitones, that there are smaller divisions of the tone that can be heard and sung and played. And certainly that was the case with ancient Greek music. So in that sense, it differs from the modern Western musical idiom, whether it's classic or pop music in the West today, because it had these more subtle intervals. Nonetheless, it remains, I think, clear that it was a tonal system, and that it is at the basis of music that survived, and we have some documentation, into the Roman period and then into the Christian period of history, and was eventually picked up in some form by both the traditions of Byzantine music and the Gregorian song that was used to perform, for example, the Psalms of the Bible, and that then led to some of the Renaissance discoveries in music of the 14th and 15th century that are at the root of all subsequent Western music. So what I've done is I've traced, I think, the tradition of Western music, which many scholars would say began in the 9th century with Gregorian song, to the ancient Greek systems, of which perhaps the earliest music that we can hear is that of Euripides Orestes of 408 BC.